Remember, success is in the eye of the beholder. It's not in the eyes of anybody else. When you let someone else own your success, then they own your power. Hang on to power is something you give away. Authority is something that just happens to exist. But power is something that you give away. Do not give away your definition of success.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
The journey. The journey.
new sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is
The journey. The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson. Today we have a Memphis icon. There's been a few other places, and then he came back to Memphis, then he left, then a few other places, then he came back to Memphis again. But this brother's from Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, before I get into him, let's go to our quote. And our quote comes from the phenomenal, great, iconic Nelson Mandela. And he goes something like this. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. From the great Nelson Mandela. We're going to ask our guest about that quote and what it means to him. But listen, we have Dr. Dwayne Benjamin, also affectionately known as Spaz. He's a man of the purple and gold. He's an Omega man. Went to Wilberforce University up there in the cold state of Ohio. He's a military man. He's a Marine, Semper Fi, and all of that. So before we go any further, and without further ado, we have brother Dwayne Benjamin.
Wow. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate the opportunity.
Man, I'm so happy you here, man. Finally.
Well, it took a minute, but I'm, like I said, I've been following you, and I'm very proud of what you've been doing, and it's an honor to be here because I know folks that have come and sat in the same seat have probably had a lot more going on than I did. So get the opportunity to come here.
Let me tell y'all something about this brother. So he's a friend of mine. And a friend because I moved to Memphis back 1996. Didn't know a soul. My wife and his family knew each other in Indianapolis. Yeah. He took me under his wing and showed me Memphis. And I've been here and been in love with Memphis ever since. So don't let the smooth taste fool you. This gentleman had a lot going on. No, you took it well in terms of trusting who I was introducing you to and who I was bringing around. Buddy, we had some time that we won't talk about. So listen, we're gonna go back to Indianapolis. We're gonna go back to Indianapolis. Early years. Tell me about your earliest memories and who was in the house with you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always say, some of our biggest heroes are not necessarily people that are in the newspaper or folks that maybe come across mine whenever you think of heroes. So I need look no further than the walls of my home. Okay. And so that was with my older brother. He did a lot in terms of being a role model for if you work hard, you can get a lot of achievement and success, especially when you set goals. I watched him in sports. And I watched him have goals in sports, and I watched him make it all the way to the professional level in terms of playing in the NFL. Wow. And so he certainly was an accomplished person in terms of going after goals. And I learned from him, set goals and work hard to really get to it. We didn't grow up in the best side of Indianapolis, and so there were some challenges along the way, and my sister was a role model on that to make sure we stayed out of trouble. Okay. And notice I said my sister, I didn't say my brother, but she's my older sister, so she's a big influence there. And certainly my dad and my grandpa, they had, their blue collar background, but they had a work ethic that was just unbelievable. Right. I think I have 2 to 3 sources of income now because that's what I watched my father and grandpa do, and they did it because they loved it, but they also did it because they wanted a certain lifestyle they wanted to maintain. I got one I want to maintain, and sometimes it takes more than one source of income to do that. And so, but I had a lot of opportunities growing up to say,
tell me about your mom.
I set the goals.
You didn't mention your mom.
No, I didn't mention my mom, relevant to maybe some of that part, but certainly what we learned from our mother was a lot about life. My father was a quiet man. He didn't speak much at all, but we got all philosophical thoughts from our mother. And so my mother taught us how to be nurturing how to care. I remember when I first my first job was at Nora Library, which was a library right across our high school back in Indianapolis. And I gave my mother $40 out of each check. And she would take that check and not only show her appreciation for it, but she used it wisely. And so I kind of leveraged that in terms of whoever significant others I may have, to be nurturing in that way. And so it's actually helped me to be a better significant other as a result of that. If I can say that without saying anything wrong. But you get what's bad, you got a good thing. I can tell you right now.
Who outside of your parents had an impact on young Dwayne?
I'm going to tell you, this is a true story. I tell the story all the time. And I told it even most recently when I was teaching Sunday school. And like I said, I'm a regular Sunday school teacher on a weekly basis. But I was sitting in class, and I was in about the 4th grade, and our assistant minister was the teacher. And all he said was, now you got to keep in mind, I'm over 60. So when I say 6th grade, it was a long time ago.
Right.
And so he said, if you go to college, I guarantee you'll make at least $28,000-$29,000 a year. Now we're talking way back in the day.
Right.
And my parents were making that together. And I said, man, so I had this influence as far as my brother, and then I said, man, I'm going to college. I don't care what it takes. And back then I just had a financial reason to go. Right. And so upon graduation from Wilberforce, I was commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps. And my paycheck was much higher than that.
Right.
And so I went back to the preacher before I shipped out to my first duty station, and I told him the story. Because by this time, I'm 22 years old.
Right.
And so I told him the story, and he was like, wow. And I was like, you just never know how something small like that can be said that has the impact for somebody that can change the trajectory of their entire life. And I literally was like in the 4th grade when I heard that. And so I leverage that now, obviously, to make it more today. If I tell somebody you graduate from college, I guarantee you $30,000 a year, they're like, yeah, whatever.
Like you said, soda bottles and whatnot.
So I try to tell them a little bit more than that.
Right.
Anyway, but at the end of the day, like I said, there's accomplishments, whether you're an entrepreneur and go to school or decide to do corporate and go to school, whatever the case may be. But the thing is that, I was influenced that I was going to have to do more than just graduate high school. And so, it definitely had a lasting impact on me. And again, he's gone on to glory, but I'm still telling that story.
Right.
And so that's how impactful he's been.
That one story that you heard in the 4th grade has lived all these years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I continue to tell that story. Yeah.
When did you know you was going to be okay? When could you look in the mirror and say, you know what? I got this thing called life. I can do this.
I remember that like yesterday.
Really?
Yeah. And so I had plans leaving high school to enlist in the Marine Corps, right? And primarily to get money for school. So I knew I was going to eventually go to college. But at 18, I was thinking military. That's it. And then when me and my best friend at the time, who eventually became my college roommate for 4 years, we ended up changing our trajectory at the same time, and fraternity brothers, in fact.
Sorry about that.
Spoken by a true Kappa. But we heard this. I don't know if I want to say pitch, but we certainly heard the story from, his name was Inyofu Berto Elmore, better known as Inyo, and he was a student at Wilberforce University, and he was telling us about Wilberforce. And unfortunately in Indianapolis, number one, there wasn't a lot of conversations about HBCUs.
Right.
And at the time in high school, I was in all advanced classes and often found myself the only African American in class. But you got to think about the population of how it was set in Indianapolis back then. And so we were bused on the other side, and busing was an effort to integrate the schools more.
Right.
And so anyway, I knew academically there were some possibilities, but there was still some doubt, right? But again, I'm thinking college at age 22. Because I'm going to go do 4 years in Marine Corps and save money. So he says, well, come on to Wilberforce, HBCU, take a look at it. Again, I had never heard of HBCUs, never heard of Wilberforce. But I've been blessed to always been an opportunist. When the door opens, I walk right through it.
Right.
And so my grandmother used to call me a radical in a good way. You're always doing something different from everybody else. And so anyway, as a radical, I said, all right, let's go. I signed up for the Marine Corps for what was called delayed entry program.
Right.
And so I didn't have to go right away. So me and Rick, we showed up. As soon as we went through the corridor of Wilberforce, there was a sign that said, we give students a chance where they don't get a chance elsewhere. And so they take in students with challenged GPAs coming out of high school.
Right.
But as long as you get grants and the money, you
Right.
can go ahead and go there. But they give you a chance. And so they took a chance and they approved us, accepted us right on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was no waiting on an acceptance letter or nothing. They approved us right on the spot. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in class. Now, I only took 1 week's worth of clothes because keep in mind, Wilberforce was only 2 hours from Indianapolis.
Right.
So he said, I'm gonna bring y'all back at the end of the week. Want just make sure you get in school. So anyway, they gave us some initial, stuff from the bookstore, notepads, all stuff. I'm sitting in class, and they said, well, we have 3 classes that you're eligible to test out of if you want to take the final. I said, all right, let me go ahead and take this final. I aced all 3 of them, and I said, man, I could do this. I remember I told myself, I said, I got this college thing. And I went on to graduate with honors, graduate cum laude. When I went to go get my MBA, the work ethic that I learned at an HBCU carried over to a traditional school. When I say traditional, I mean non-HBCU.
Right.
And so I went and got my MBA at a non-HBCU in San Diego at National University. And my GPA was even higher.
Right.
It was like a 3.7 in grad school. And then when I went and got my PhD, University of Berkeley, it was even higher.
Right.
It was a 4.0. But all that started when I took those 3 exams at Wilberforce University. And I said, man, I think I got this.
You had it. You had it.
I've been having it ever since.
All right, this is the last question. Last question of the segment. Every brother can go back to a moment when they realize that they are a black man. What's that moment for you?
Well,
hold on real quick. Listen, we're going to come right back on the journey where Brother Dwayne is going to share with us when he realized he was a black man. Stay right there. This is the journey on the Kudzukian Network. Hold on, this is my Ali. Listen, stay right there. This is the Kudzukian Network. Stay right there. Take it. Take care.
The Boys of Color Conference is here again.
The Gentlemen's League and The Journey are hosting the Boys of Color Conference right here in Memphis, Tennessee at Agri Center International.
Parents, send your young men in grades 3 through 12 on Saturday, March 29th for a day of learning, inspiration, and mentoring. From coding to boxing to cooking, there's something for everyone.
Empower your son to dream bigger, achieve greater, and break barriers. Watch him take the first step toward a brighter future.
Register at thegentsleague.org.
Boys of Color Conference, March 29th at Agri Center International. Today we have Brother Dwayne Benjamin. Hold on, let me put some respect on it. Dr. Dwayne Benjamin. Former Marine Corps, executive, entrepreneur, father, brother, many things. But the one thing he's definitely, and he's a black man. And before we left, we asked Dwayne, what was that moment that you realized you were a black man?
Well, I remember when I first realized as a kid that I was African American, and then it's been reinforced along the way, including recently.
Okay.
And so I'll touch on all 3 of those here real quick. But as a kid, when we first got bused, right, and I was going to school in an predominantly African American school system. In the school we could walk to. They sent us to a school on the other side of town. It took an hour after you pick everybody up. It took over an hour each way, right? And then I landed in these classes, and they had us take tests when we got there. And they said, oh, you don't belong in regular class, you belong in advanced classes. And so I get to the classes in the 4th grade now. And remember, the other story was from the 4th grade. So I don't know why 4th grade was such a learning year for me.
Pivotal moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get there, and my favorite outfit was these slacks that was red, black, and white checkered.
Okay.
And the shirt was green, tan, and white checkered.
Okay, your favorite outfit.
Outfit.
Red.
Clearly wasn't a match.
But the red.
Yeah, which is why I don't wear it today. Too many scars. But yeah, so I wore that outfit. So anyway, I get to class, and a couple of students were laughing at me, right? And I was the only African American in class. And this big young lady comes up to me, big girl, yeah. And I had the option to make in front of her because she was a big girl, but I didn't because I knew I was outnumbered.
Right.
But anyway, I started, she came up and she befriended me a little bit. And, you know, kids can be brutally honest.
Right.
Right. And then we walked up to the teacher, and she basically said, blah, 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 this about Dwayne and that. But his clothes look funny. And the teacher put her arm around me and said, that's okay. It's not nice to make in front of poor people. That's the first time I realized we was poor.
The teacher said
The teacher. And then she said, it's not nice to make in front of them people, meaning African Americans. True story. I was in the 4th grade. Now this young lady, we continued to be friends because again, she was just being brutally honest. In fact, she was the only friend because they wouldn't talk to me because I was African American, because people fear people they don't know. Right. Or know about.
Right.
And so, but eventually all that worked itself out, obviously. And some of my best friends.
So that was one.
Yeah, so that was one. And then when I was in the Marine Corps, and I got commissioned as an officer, going through officer candidate school, you got to picture this. Officer candidate school is like boot camp.
Right.
In each platoon full of candidates, they call us candidates instead of recruits. Each platoon had about 56. A company was made up of 3 platoons. So we're talking about over 150 people.
Right.
I was the only African American officer candidate. This is what the Marine Corps. When I went through training, this particular training class, only one out of 3 platoons. So finish up Wood Force, get commissioned, get to my first duty assignment there in El Toro, California at Air Base. And the young lady at the time, remember those big calendars you have on your desk and you can write down appointments on those calendars.
Right.
So she said, do you mind if I write your name down? I said, no. Why is that? And she said, because you're the first African American. In fact, they didn't say African American, they said black back then. So you're the first black officer I've ever seen check in here. I said, really? No. And then more recently, when I was going
So she was going to write your name on her calendar.
Yeah.
To commemorate the day that she met the first black she has seen come to training.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and it's been reinforced along the way. I remember, when I was with Eli Lilly and Company, when I first got to Lexington, Kentucky as a territory, they had told me I was the first black pharmaceutical rep out of all the pharmaceutical companies that they had put in that area. I said, okay. And then it just kind of continued on, right? And so what for some and for me, back in the day.
Recently. You said there was some recently.
Yeah. Recently, where I arrived at, I found out I was the only one. And so where I just arrived at. Okay. And so, in fact, they said you might be the first one. So, but true story.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it continues on.
Right.
And but what initially, and for some people and for myself too, might have been a scenario of intimidation or challenges I wear as a badge of honor.
Right.
And make sure I get it right, do it right. In fact, it makes them work even more harder.
Where did that come from? Where did that come from?
So, that's a good question. And again, I think it's just...
and I want to say this. Yeah. You are a unique individual in that, I'm telling y'all, I've been with this man. We've been out all night. Come Sunday morning, bright and early Sunday morning, he's going to be at church.
Yep.
And he might be leading the choir.
Yep.
Where does this discipline and focus that I've always admired, where did it come from?
I think for me, I spend a lot of time trying to explain and encourage. And what I mean by that is when I was all the way back in school, when I was the only one in advanced classes, I used to tell the other students, hey, work harder in this area and you can come up to that class as well. Or, when it was time for me to be the only, African-American officer there, I'm like, come on, Marine Corps, we got to increase this percentage here because we can do it.
Right.
And so, and then back then they had quota systems and all this stuff, and they start setting goals about, hey, we got to increase our numbers in these particular areas and in these particular segments amongst society. And so, but for me, it kind of goes back to whom much is given, much is expected. And so I wear that.
Okay.
And I know everything that I do, somebody's watching.
Right.
Even if it's one, by the way, I'm also a grandparent, right? So I got 6 grandkids. And so even if it's one of my grandbabies watching, whether it's my granddaughter, I always say I got a second generation Brady Bunch. I got 3 granddaughters and 3 grandsons.
Okay.
So whether it's any of them, I want them to understand these are some of the rewards you can get if you work hard, but most importantly, you got to lift as you climb.
Right.
You gotta have your hand down. I always say I climb the ladder with one hand. Because the other hand has somebody else holding onto it.
Good.
And if they're not holding onto it, I'm reaching out for somebody to grab it if they want to.
Right.
Right. And so that's kind of something that's been ingrained in me in a long time. And I remember kind of going back to my oldest brother. He was very giving as well. And then my oldest brother is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi.
Right.
And he would always make an accomplishment and share something. Doing an accomplishment, share something. When he made it to the NFL, he's getting everybody in the family money, including me. And so he was just always very, very giving and always looking out.
Right.
And so I've seen him, kind of do the same thing along the way, especially when he started getting involved with law enforcement in Indianapolis. He's a retired deputy chief of police there. But he was helping, African-American officers get on the police force, showing the mayor the value of increasing numbers for this particular reason, especially with society and communities that they was representing. And so, again, kind of watching him and picking up best practices, watching others, watching you. I mean, you could be doing this by yourself, but you're sharing it, right? You got others that you work with and you got a team going. And so, I like, being around like-minded people,
there you
right?
Go. There you go.
Keeps my game going.
Quick question. Who'd you dream you'd be as a young person? Who was that person you said, when I grow up, I'm going to be this?
It's interesting that you asked that question because it wasn't a superhero or a major athlete. Because number one, I knew I wasn't that athletically. Even though, true story, I'm saying what I'm saying, it is what it is. My favorite athlete was O.J. Simpson growing up. I absolutely loved his game. Just got some challenges in some other areas. But anyway, growing up, I didn't see all that. I just saw the juice.
Right.
But there was, I'll never forget, I was in junior high school, and I have a twin brother. And we were good twin, bad twin, just in terms of behavior. Right. So he was always in trouble. And I was the nerd. And so I got called down to the principal's office. I said, oh man, they got the wrong twin again. Because that would happen on a regular basis. And I get down there and I'm looking around and said, wait a minute, hold up. Because there was like maybe 5, 6 other nerds. I said, African-American nerds. We all nerds. What are we doing out here at the vice principal's office?
Right.
So they were introducing us to an upward bound program at Purdue University called MEEP, which was an acronym, Minority Engineering Advancement Program. And this guy comes in, and an African-American brother, and he's wearing this double-breasted pinstripe suit and, got the shirt tie going, the cufflinks, he's wearing a bucket of cologne, the room immediately smells good, right? So he comes walking in, and he's telling us about engineering. And my perception at the time, the only thing I knew about engineers was somebody drove a train, because that's what you saw in cartoons. That's what we called them. And so I started hearing about, the engineering, and I did enroll into the Upward Bound program, which was a 4-week program at Purdue that was held every year, right, every summer. And so anyway, I knew I wanted to be like Mr. King.
Right.
I didn't know what that looked like, and I knew I wanted to, fly first class. I knew, and in fact, the first time I flew first class, I always said fly first class on somebody else's dime.
Yes.
Meaning the company pays for it. Right. I was almost in tears. And it was my first job with Eli Lilly, but it wasn't the first assignment. Right. But they had us go, I became a sales trainer, and they had us go do an assignment cross country, and we got first class tickets. Right. And I almost started tearing up. I said, man, it's another goal that I've reached, that I've accomplished. And first thing I did, when I got a pharmaceutical sales job, because again, after college, I went to Marines.
Right.
I went and bought me a navy blue pinstripe suit. Yeah, then I started wearing a bucket of cologne every day. Been doing it ever since. I just knew I wanted to be like Mr. King.
There you go.
That brother was smooth, man. And so, he led the Upper Brown program, but he also was an engineer with IBM there in Indiana. And so he was a big, big influence in terms of what I wanted to be like.
That's
and so, because I was at one of those, ages and stages where you don't know.
Right. Right.
But I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but I'm gonna be in a navy blue suit, first class with a bucket of cologne. They come on the plane now. Somebody smells good.
Okay. So, oh my goodness, you got me tickled. You got me tickled, so tickled.
But I would say this, I would hope that folks understand, and teenagers and young men understand, you want to have an ideal about where you want to be, but if you don't have an ideal specifically on what that looks like yet, that's okay.
That's all right.
Stay open to different ideals and different suggestions. In fact, when I was in the Marines, I worked in military police, and I thought I was going into the FBI.
Okay.
I applied because I when I worked as a military police, I was what's called an adjunct professor. I worked my way up to that. That's equivalent to a chief of police. I'm sorry, a deputy chief of police. And so the next thing I know, they say, hey, yep, we got you. I passed the background test. I did the academic test, passed all that. 4 months down the road was my report date. And I ended up saying, all right, I got a housewife and 2 little kids. My adult children were toddlers at the time. I said, I need to go get something. So that's when I went over to Eli Lilly and Company, which was headquartered there in Indianapolis. And I tried to go on one in a manufacturing facility. I said, well, I'm gonna park here for 4 months. Then I'm heading off to the FBI Academy. 10 minutes into the interview, the trajectory of my entire life changed. The recruiter says, can I stop you for just a second? I said, yes, sir. He said, let me make sure I got this straight. You're a Marine Corps veteran. I said, yes, sir. And he said, you have an MBA in marketing. I said, yes, sir. He said, have you ever heard of pharmaceutical sales? I said, no, sir. I've been hearing. I was on the road with the yes, sir, until he got to that. Right. And so I said, I've been carrying a rifle, for the last 10 years. So he says, I want you to go ride with a representative for 2 days, and then you let me know what you think. And on day one, we're riding around, we're making these calls, and he's talking about the product, and people are buying into it. And the guy that came and picked me up, he was a very Italian guy. He had on a double-breasted suit, looking good and smelling good. I said, here we go, I'm getting close. I go. So anyway, he picks me up, we ride around. By the end of that first day, I called, back then we didn't have cell phones. I had 2 quarters. I dropped 1 quarter in the payphone, called the recruiter, Eli Lilly, and come down and said, this is absolutely what I want to do. And I took that second quarter, called the FBI recruiter, say, hey, man, it ain't going to happen. So I have been in healthcare sales and ever since.
Ever since.
I've been a sales representative, a sales manager, national sales director.
All because you were doing something for 4 months.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah.
God ordered them steps, man.
He did.
Said, we just need you to just a little bit of window.
Yeah.
Wow.
So just kind of reiterate to the kids, sometimes pivots are presented to you, and it's okay.
Yeah.
If you grab it. And my favorite saying is, you know what, I may not know much about it, I may not be an SME or subject matter expert in that area, but I'll let God take care of it.
There you go. There you go. There you go. What has Memphis meant to you and as an individual? Because you came to Memphis, left Memphis, came back to Memphis, left Memphis again, then came back to Memphis. I think this is your 3rd time.
It is.
So what is it that has connected you to this city, and what is this city given to you?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, the city has given us a lot of love. When my first wife and I first arrived here, much like you, the only people we knew was who was inside the car.
Right.
But I always have a plan when I relocate somewhere new is find a church a gym and the frat brothers within 7 days.
Yeah.
And if I go to the gym first, I'm gonna find the other two through the brothers that I meet at the gym.
Right.
And so that's always worked for me.
Right.
And so the hospitality that my fraternity brothers and my church members showed us when we first got here was unprecedented in terms of, I had, again, most recently had been in the Marine Corps. They did my first job assignment, but had never been to a place like Memphis. I said, man, what's this going to be like? And then it went from a scenario of being comfortable to actually loving it. Let's be honest, too, the cost of living here is great. I've lived in California and was like, I'm getting this on the first train smoking out of here. $5 and $6 for gas, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I lived there for a second time in 2015 to 2018. But the love that we had bonded with our friends, fraternity brothers, church members, neighbors, it just was a reason to come back. And so I've been blessed to have career opportunities where they'll say, you can live anywhere in the country. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so they say, we're coming back. And so kids got grown, stayed here.
Right.
And then me and my late wife, we moved away. Opportunity came up, said, hey, you can live anywhere in the country. And at this time, we were living in New Orleans. New Orleans was a great place.
Right.
But we was like, wow. The kids are only 5 hours up the road. Let's go. So we went ahead and did that thing, and just been, just really been enjoying it. And then Memphis allows you to flourish if you want to.
Right.
It wasn't hard for me to get into the network. I met Mayor Harrington more than once.
Right.
Some other city leaders as well. I've had the opportunity to come across some other business leaders, other civic leaders. It's not hard if you bringing something to the table.
Right.
Now everybody's time is valuable, so
Right.
it's not about just getting in front of them just to get in front of them. But if you got something of value to bring, folks will listen.
Right.
And most importantly is they'll take a chance on you. And I think that's one of the reasons why Memphis has done well as a city. Right. Every city has its challenges, but every city has its opportunities. And unfortunately, the opportunities don't get shared as much as the challenges do, because challenges are more sensational.
Right.
But certainly there's a heck of a lot more opportunities here than it is challenges. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to come back. And Memphis has let me be me. They let me grow in leadership.
Right.
I'm also a former adjunct professor at Lemoyne College.
Right.
That was how I got to meet Mayor Harrington. He used to have a black tie event every year. But anyway, they let me, in fact, my first college teaching job was Lemoyne. And they took a chance on me, let me do it and do my thing, and I flourished well there. And in fact, hopefully one day I get opportunity to go back there as an adjunct professor as my schedule levels out as I'm staring at retirement. So,
Any regrets? Anything that you would say, you know what, if I could do that over again, I would do it.
do ex-wives count? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Forgive me, Lord. Just kidding. I like to say this, man, and I would say, first of all, I don't do regrets. I think God orders your steps for a reason. There was a lot of challenges that I've had, including job losses. Even most recently, one of the reasons I'm with the new company I am now is a part of a corporate downsizing. I'm like, man, at age 61, what am I going to do? And I still want to do what I love to do, but I knew I was tenured, which means I got all the experience, but I'm also going to come with a paycheck.
With a big paycheck,
I'm just going to walk through the door for milk and cookies.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, fortunately, I was able to get an opportunity and still be able to do it. But, you know, I just think that when it comes to regrets, I take the challenges and share them versus looking back as a regret. I might be having someone else that I come across that might be going in that direction. I'd say, here's what you might want to do.
Right.
Yeah, so I look at as regrets as blessings.
Okay.
But they're not a blessing if you keep it to yourself. But you got to go out and share it, and whether you're on a stage, whether you're talking to a group of people, or whether you're sitting in front of a camera.
That transparency.
Yeah. Take that so people understand. You know, you didn't just walk into the situation. I have to have that conversation with my grandkids all the time, especially when I'm reinforcing the need for them to do well in school.
Right.
I'm like, hey, you know, this what just handed it to me. You
Right.
had to work to get all this stuff.
Right.
And so, you know, folks just need to be patient. And sometimes I would think one of the biggest learnings was probably that I would be more patient, but it's in my DNA to always keep grabbing for stuff.
Okay,
right?
now you said that, so I wanna jump on in.
Yeah.
And we headed on. We about to land this plane. You're going back to Indianapolis. I want you to visualize that house you was raised in. You walk up the steps, walk in the front door, sitting at the table, watching cartoons is young Dwayne Benjamin. What would you say to him?
I would say you're going to get a lot of opportunities in life, and do not be fearful. If you fear anything, fear God, because you will stay focused in trying to please him. And if you can embrace that, whatever you try, you know, just relax. Sometimes there were situations where I stressed out and actually God was in control.
Right.
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 And so if I went back, it would definitely be more patient and enjoy the ride.
I got
have
you.
some fun along the way, which I have fun now. I have a lot of fun now.
Right.
But I probably could even have more fun if I stressed even less stuff.
So we got you talking to yourself.
Yeah.
But now I want you to talk to all these young boys and young people that are watching you right now. And I want you to talk right in that camera. But I want you to leave them with a spasm, something that they can hold on to from this moment.
Yeah, most definitely. First, I would say make sure that as you proceed in life to go after whatever it is that you want to go after, make sure you stay extremely focused and understand professionally what it takes to get there. Understand the prerequisites, the requirements, what folks are looking for. And then also, don't be afraid to be innovative along the way, because we do need to understand that change comes about from innovation and creativity. But stay focused. Don't let nobody take you off course. We all have outside influences, whether you're young or whether you're an adult. You're still going to have outside influence because everyone likes to be liked. And so in doing so, sometimes that will help deviate us from our plan or our strategy. But with that being said, stay extremely focused. Don't let anyone define who you are. And speaking of definition, remember, success is in the eye of the beholder. It's not in the eyes of anybody else. When you let someone else own your success, then they own your power. Hang on to power is something you give away. Authority is something that just happens to exist. But power is something that you give away. Do not give away your definition of success. And remember, as it relates to success, success depends on backbone, not wishbones. You got to work for it.
Ooh. Backbones, not wishbones. Backbones, not wish. No, I'm joking. Listen, we gonna keep bringing them. There's so many amazing men in this community. You have many of examples for you to follow. It's my job to bring them to you, and I'm gonna keep doing my job. Hey, I'm Larry Robinson. For our guest and friend,
Thank you,
Dwayne
sir.
Benjamin.
I certainly
Dr.
appreciate it.
Dwayne Benjamin.
There you go.
We're going to keep bringing them. You keep coming back. This is The Journey on the Kudzukian Network. Till next time. Thank you to our partner, the Grand Boulé of Sigma Pi Phi Fraternity, Delta Chapter. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the Kudzukian app from the App Store or Google Play, or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the Kudzukian Network.